Hello, and welcome to another edition of North Penn Answers. My name is Joe Sullivan, and I'm a member of the Board of School Directors. On today's program, I'll have a chance to sit down with the new North Penn Principal, Mr. Todd Bauer. We also will be featuring the work of our Education, Community, and Policy Committee, and in particular, the state's new volunteer requirements. Joining me now are board members and ECP committee members, Suzan, Leonard, and Carolyn Murphy, as well as Cheryl McCue, our Director of Human Resources for the North Penn School District. Welcome. Before we get into the work of the committee, Suzan, can you explain what the Education Policy and Community Committee is?
Sure, thank you, Joe. The committee is made up of 3 of the board members, and we meet monthly to discuss issues such as curriculum, purchasing of books, grant applications, student achievement, as well as the policies that we will be discussing tonight.
Carolyn, could you sort of share with us some of the topics from the past that you've discussed in those committee meetings?
We've talked about, well, I have to start with Halloween, of course, the famous Halloween policy. I mean, it's the whole gamut of, we talk about curriculum, we talk about, of course, I'm thinking of the Penndale third period, which brought a lot of parents out. We talk about grading, we talked about final exam exemption at the high school was a biggie. So many things, many topics, anything having to do with North Penn curriculum that we discuss.
Well, I'm guessing one of the big topics from last year was the change in the Child Protective Services law. Cheryl McCue, our Director of Human Resources, was leading the charge on these changes that affected not only our employees, but also our volunteers. Those changes came with very little notice from the state. Cheryl, how did we begin communicating these changes to our community?
Absolutely, Joe. That's a great question. We have begun the process with the revisions most recently from July and now August with our ECP committee meeting last week, where we provided the members of the committee with a draft of the board policy. Following that, it will go to our full board of school directors in October for a first reading, as do all policies. And then subsequently following that, it will be for board action in November at our board meeting. In addition to that, once we have all of the board members in approval of our revision to the policy, we will present to our home and school presidents at their October meeting so that we have the key people who are organizing and working with our volunteers knowledgeable of the revisions that needed to be made to the policy that we rolled out last year. And then finally, once we have approval, we'll begin making changes to our website so that our families and our community members, all of the people who support our programs through a volunteer effort in the district, will have access to that information under the For Families tab, and we have a volunteer section. So we will be updating that through the Office of Human Resources so that everyone has the appropriate information.
Great. So it's my understanding that the state provided some changes this past summer. So let's get into where we are now. If a person is volunteering in our schools, what do they need to do?
Another good question. They, first and foremost, as volunteers, they'll need to determine the nature of the activity as well as the frequency, because the changes that occurred in the statute really made reference to defining what a volunteer does through direct contact with our students, as well as it being of a repeated or regular nature, which wasn't in the reg prior to that. So depending on what the activity is and the frequency with which they'll be in our buildings and around our students and providing those supportive services to the district would determine the level of clearances that would be required. And that will also be communicated via our website.
Okay. So is it a certain page on the website? Where can a parent or volunteer find the information on the website? Under
the, when you open up the district website at npenn.org, it's on the very front page, the For Families tab across the top, and then alphabetical sort down to the V for volunteers. And once you click that, it will open up to an informational letter, and then we have all of the links actually embedded right in that document for access to the state and federal websites for the clearance information. In addition to that, there is the North Penn volunteer affirmation form that we request and require from all volunteers. And then additionally, there's a facts sheet, which are all the frequently asked questions regarding volunteers, the changes to the policy, what's been discussed at ECP, and just important information for our volunteers to know. So for families, volunteer tab.
Good to know. Suzan, obviously this affects board policy. Could you give us an idea what the process is to update the board policy?
What happens at ECP is that the policy is presented, the policy that was mandated by the state. We look at that policy and look at the policy that we've enacted and make the changes that are necessary and appropriate to conform it to the state. Then it goes to a first reading, and then it goes to the board for approval after a second reading.
Carolyn, have you been hearing anything, feedback from parents about this new law?
Well, it's kind of almost like foreshadowing. Almost a year ago, a parent came to an ECP meeting, and she had moved here from Florida. And she had done some volunteering in the district, and she was surprised that she hadn't had to have a background check, because in Florida, one must have a background check. So then, subsequently, everything else happened here in the state. I have, in my neighborhood, I have middle school kids, elementary kids, and high school kids. And the parents I've talked to, they're really happy about the policy. Nice. They really are, because they feel like it protects their own children.
Cheryl, once the background checks are complete, it's my understanding that your office manages them.
We do.
Can you tell what goes into that?
We have a database set up that is a shared Excel spreadsheet basically for each of the schools, and once we receive the clearances in, we do the formal checks, accessing the state and federal websites to confirm the information, and then share outward to the designated people at the building level, which basically are the principal and the secretary, as well as then they communicate outward to the home and school volunteers and people running the different events, so that they know which volunteers have clearances and are available and approved to be a volunteer within the district and to be able to be working with our students at those events.
Okay. That sounds like a lot of work, making sure volunteers have the proper clearances. Can you tell us a little bit more about what your department does?
Sure. In the Human Resources Department, we have, in addition to myself, we have a Human Resources Supervisor, 2 Human Resource Specialists, and our sub-finder operator who works on coordinating the need for our substitutes, both for professional and support staff in the district. And then we have a part-time secretary who supports the operations of the department. We do anything from working through job fairs and recruitment and hiring, onboarding, through orienting our staff members when they first come into the district, making sure that we're in compliance with all the laws for employment, as well as then addressing any of the individual concerns that staff members have. We oversee the supervision and evaluation process for our staff members, and we work with, obviously, this most recent opportunity with our volunteers and the management of those, making sure that they're safe and appropriate to be in our buildings with our students. We do just about anything that needs to be done to support our staff and the work that they do with the students, which is most important in the district. So any given day, it's a new challenge, and it's a phenomenal staff to help address the concerns that we're provided. We're streamlining processes, we're interfacing with the business office, our payroll department, our benefits people, just to make sure that our staff have what they need in order to be successful and do the job they do with kids. Okay,
I'm trying to digest all that, but that sounds like a lot of work, and please convey my appreciation to your staff for the outstanding job they have been doing since I've been on the board.
They're an excellent team. Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate what they do. Suzan, what are some of the big topics coming up at the next ECP meeting?
Well, from what I understand, some of the big topics coming up are course of studies for the high school and course of studies for the middle school. It's also age of entrance, and there's some policies about athletics and the days that students are allowed to play and not play. And again, the ECP committee is very involved in the curriculum and the course studies and the books that coincide with those things, and organizing things so all of our curriculum aligns with Common Core standards. It's a lot of information that's done.
Yeah, one of the reasons why we wanted to talk about committees, the separate committees, is because a lot of times people just see the action meeting and the work session and don't understand all the work that goes on prior to coming to those the work session and me. So thank you very much for sharing what's coming up in the committee and the amount of work that each committee does, especially the ECP at this time. Carolyn, why should community members come to the meeting?
Well, I think Suzan just spelled it out.
Right.
Because the nitty-gritty guts of this district happens at ECP. So I think parents are finding they can find out the curriculum changes, new textbooks, testing policies. Oftentimes administrators or speakers will come to our meetings and be very informative about what's going on in the district. We almost have a group of groupies that come almost every time. Okay. But I find more and more parents coming, and we're just delighted. And what people need to know is that they can debate with us, and we like to listen.
Right. I find the committee meetings to be in a more casual sort of setting where you can have a better, more transparent exchange of ideas and a more candid conversation. And it's
less intimidating to the parents that want to come here rather than standing at a podium. They have conversation, and it's the same kind of conversation as we're having right here. And I think they go away and can go talk to their friends and neighbors and say, hey, I've learned some valuable stuff from these committee meetings, and it was very relaxed. And I like that about it as well.
And we usually send them away happier than when they came.
Well,
that's our goal.
That's a good thing. Last question for both Carolyn and Suzan. What do you enjoy most about being a school director at the North Penn School Board?
I've been in this district for 40-some years. I love meetings. I always have. I always wanted to be in the school board, and I've enjoyed every minute. I love being part of the district. I love being part of the decision-making of the district. And I found it to be very, very rewarding, and I'm thankful to the community for putting me there.
Nice. And Suzan?
Yeah, I pretty much have the same answer, actually. I love everything about it. My children went all through here. I was an active parent when they were in elementary school, middle school, high school, and so I was involved, and I came to school board meetings as well, and I get great pleasure out of serving the community. I get great pleasure out of being involved in the community, and I attend a lot of things. I attend the sporting events and the theater events and the music events and the nanotechnical, experiments that go on, and there's nothing I don't like. And I also, I'm very honored to have been able to serve for the past 3 years.
Carolyn, Suzan, and Cheryl, thank you for joining us today. If you are interested in attending an Education Policy Community Committee meeting, dates and times are on the North Penn website under the School Board tab. Up next, we will be sitting down with our new high school principal, Mr. Todd Bauer. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Joining me now is Todd Bauer, principal of North Penn High School. Welcome. Todd joined us this summer and had several weeks of crossover with Bert Hines, who retired as principal on September 3rd. What were your first impressions of North Penn High School once you started working with staff and students?
Well, first, Joe, thanks for having me. If I'm being totally honest, and I believe that's the point here of this show, it's my first impression when I came here was the size of the building. It was overwhelming at first, but quickly, within a week or two of walking around the building and getting to know some people and some familiar faces, the building got small very quickly. So that was my first impression. In terms of staff, faculty, support from central office, it's been nothing but positive. Everyone's been wonderful, so supportive, eager to help, and I think it says a lot about the school and the community that there's been such a smooth transition.
We should probably talk about your background a little bit. I understand you knew at least one North Penn program well here.
Yes, well, we'll get to that, but first I was a math teacher. I taught high school math at Upper Moreland for 1 year, and then at Souderton High School. I actually taught in the old high school for 1 year, and then I was at the new high school for 5. I also taught middle school math at Indian Valley Middle School in the Souderton School District. I've taught everything from 6th grade math up to AP Calculus. And then, what you were just alluding to, I was the head swim coach at Souderton. I coached the boys and girls swimming and diving teams, and I also coached the water polo team as well.
Nice.
So after I moved on from teaching into administration, I went to Central Bucks, where I worked at Central Bucks High School South, and I was assistant principal there.
Nice. Have you always aspired to be a principal?
To be honest, no. I've always found myself gravitating towards leadership positions and challenging myself with new things. And so as I continued to take courses and further my education and got my master's degree, I then wanted to pursue administration and get my certification there to afford me some opportunities. While I wasn't sure that I wanted to be a principal, I wanted to pursue that. So I enjoyed my coursework for my administrative certification and my internship, so I decided to pursue that path. As soon as I became an assistant principal, it didn't take me long to know I wanted to be a head principal. So.
And what has inspired you to be the principal at North Penn?
You know, I've lived in this community my entire life. I grew up in Harleysville. I went to Souderton, and while it's not North Penn, it's certainly close by. I live about 15 minutes from this building. I've lived in Harleysville my entire life, from birth until now. My wife and I currently reside in Harleysville. So it's, the reputation certainly precedes itself. Reputation for outstanding academics, outstanding parent and community involvement, outstanding athletics, all those things. It was just such a great opportunity. I wasn't at the time actively looking for a head principal job, but when I heard that Mr. Hines was retiring and that the position at North Penn would be available, I think it would be foolish for me not to be interested.
You're the successor of someone that's an icon at North Penn. It set a great foundation for you to build upon. I'm sure you have a vision for North Penn High School. Would you share some of your short and long-term goals that you might have in mind?
Sure. Short term, it's really anything in education is about the people. I'm trying to get to know as many students, faculty, staff, parents, school board members such as yourself. Those are my short-term goals. I find that once you get to know people, build relationships with them, and start to learn what really matters to them, then you can start to make a difference. I think the staff would tell you that there's certainly been a push to streamline some operations here, utilize technology a bit more, and we're really making a push this year to get out into the classrooms a lot more. I'm proud to say that we're only a month into school, and the administrative team here has been into over 120 classrooms already, visiting, nice. Spending time with students and learning. So that's short term, and I guess short term this year. Long term, I'm striving for continuous improvement, ways that we can get better, follow trends in education, make change. I believe I said in one of my interviews that you were present for that make change for the better, not change for the sake of changing. Mr. Hines was incredibly successful, and as you said, I am following in the footsteps of an icon. I understand that, and I really enjoyed my time with him. So we're not going to make change just to change. We're going to improve where we can. And Mr. Hines was very helpful in telling me areas that he thought needed to be worked on or things that should be on my radar. And very slowly, we're trying to tackle those things.
Who, if anyone, has had a major influence on your career?
Well, of course, anyone I think would point to their parents. My parents, Harry and Karen, have obviously been an inspiration in everything that I've done. But professionally, I would say teachers that I had even in high school, as far back as high school, really made me want to be an educator and to work with students because of the impact they had on me. From an administrative perspective, I've been very fortunate to work with Dr. Verano at Souderton, a principal I admire a lot. And then the principal at Central Bucks South is Scott David Heiser, who is also a good friend. And you know, he's just one of those people that makes decisions based on what's best for kids, not what's easy. And I've been very fortunate to work under two great leaders, and hopefully I can follow in their footsteps as well as Mr. Hines.
I'm sure being a principal at North Penn keeps you pretty busy. But what does Todd Bauer do in his off time, his spare time?
Good question again. I am busy, especially right now, just trying to wrap my head around this position and the job that comes with it. But my spare time, I have two young children. My daughter Cameron is 5, my son Brady is 3. My wife, who's also an educator, she's a teacher in Souderton School District. I just love spending time with them. Those ages are a lot of fun. We like to ski, we're very active. And we love athletics. We're Eagles season ticket holders, and we love all 4 Philadelphia main sports. And other spare time I have right now, I'm just enjoying coming here and watching our students and our student athletes and those that are involved outside of school and watching their talents on display.
Wow, that sounds like a really rich life that you're leading there, especially with the Eagles.
Yeah.
But yeah. Todd, thanks for joining us today. I know we'll have plenty of opportunities in the future for you to come back and visit us and share some of your thoughts again. That's it for this edition of North Penn Answers. I hope this episode has been informative. We appreciate all of the questions that we received, and we encourage all members of the community to participate in this dialogue. Please email northpennanswers@npenn.org. Post questions in our Say What section of the website or ask in person. We encourage all members of the community to send in your questions. Thank you and have a good night.